Hello, welcome back to another Found Show. I'm JJ Books Corner. And today we are doing something fun. I'm super excited. We're going to be talking about Heartstopper. Heartstopper Volume 6 comes out tomorrow. I don't actually know when this video is going to go out. This is a series overview of the entirety of the Heartstopper graphic novels. So we talk about all 6 volumes. I only have currently 3 in my hand. The other 2 are in my office. And the new one doesn't come out until tomorrow, so I won't get my hands on it. And so I can go buy it, which I will. Oh my god, I'm so excited. With that being said, there's also chapter 10's link down below in case you want to jump over anything familiar with this franchise or anything and you just want to, I guess, a series. I guess it kind of is a franchise. And then if you want to jump over any things like the non-spoilery section or whatever. Also, I'm not really sure how I'm going to be reviewing these. I don't know if I'm just going to go downstairs, read all 3, come back up, do a pretty lengthy review and just talk about all 3 consecutively because I feel like I could probably remember the information that I want to share, that I want to talk about. So because these are not my first time reading these, for instance, I think I read the first one like 6 or 7 times. The rest of them, it's like very early, like 2 or 3 times I only read them. I might bring up different points than I would normally bring up. I'm still going to try to talk about the overall context of the story for anybody who's never read them before, who don't want to read them but want to know the information to make it easier for you guys. I'm just giving you a very open and honest answer. I'll also tell you if my ratings do change. Some of these are not all 5s. Actually, majorities are not 5 stars. There's a few in here that are 5s. I'm not gonna lie. I think there's like 3 of them. But there's also 3 of them that were not, and one of them I really didn't like the first time I read it. And so I'm curious to see if I still have that opinion and or feeling as I got older. Because that's the big thing. I read these when I was younger, and that always does kind of skew your opinion of things as you age. Before we get started, let's go ahead and jump into a Jacob on a different day to explain to you the books that I've already written, in case you want to buy any of them. The course of the last half of last year, I wrote and released a trilogy called Gunshot Residue, starting with Gunshot Residue, leading to its sequel P49, leading to its conclusion Mr. and Mr. St. James. This came out in September, this came out in November, and this came out in December. And so I'm releasing it as one. This is it. This is Gunshot Residue, the complete edition. I'm gonna read you the new blurb, on the back of the new book. I did go ahead and grab, because I think this is a perfect sentence for them. And that is, how far are the bounds of love, which is the tagline. It is a tagline for book 3. However, I think it is a tagline for the entire series overall. And it reads as this. Alex St. James lived a perfectly normal life. That was until he learned of his husband's secret. Marcus St. James had always lived 2 different lives. Now both are coming crashing into one another. As more secrets come to light and the choices neither can take back, will Alex and DeMarcus be able to survive the fallout? How many times can one person be wrong before they can't forgive, let alone forget? Gunshot Residue is a bind-up of 3 novellas. Gunshot Residue, P49, and Mr. and Mr. St. James. It's a romantic suspense trilogy. Contains content best suited to readers. It doesn't really tell you what the secret is, however you do know that there is a secret. Marcus is a spy. That is like the biggest thing. The whole point of the series, why I couldn't tell you about it, is I do have comm titles. They're just fucking movies. And I couldn't tell you anything about it. And that is the most egregious one. I think it's so obvious. I try to make it so obvious. I try to make the cover make it so obvious. And that is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. My favorite movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. I adore that film with so much love. That's definitely what this entire inspiration was. I was like, how can I do Mr. and Mrs. Smith and make it gay? We're gonna jump into a non-spoiler review of Heartstopper. I'll hold up the first book as such, and I'll talk to you about what this book is about and the idea behind it. And at the very end of this video, after we talk about Heartstopper Volume 6, I will also refer to you back to the Alice Oseman verse video that I did when the TV show is coming out, where I kind of released my first official opinions on Heartstopper Volume 1, and then Heartstopper Volume 5 has its own dedicated video as well, so I'll link you over there as well. That being said, let's go ahead and talk Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. Oh my god. I found this when I needed to find this. Nick and Charlie. How do I describe them to you in a non-spoilery fashion? The Heartstopper series is about Nick and Charlie's relationships through through high school in the UK. We follow Charlie. He was recently had an experience where he came out of the closet the year before, and so we're dealing with him being the awkward gay kid at the school of boys. They're separated between boys and girls. And then we have Nick Nelson, who becomes his next door mate during their home class and become close friends, and he starts developing a crush. Nick at this point in time believes he is pretty freaking straight, and it's about his experiences with his sexuality as well and their conversations. Boy meets boy, boy becomes friends, boys fall in love is the whole back of it. I love Charlie Spring, however Nick Nelson will forever have my heart. He is what I believe every book boyfriend should be. It's really interesting because I do think that, I can't think of the actor's name. The person who plays him in the TV show has done some interesting things with Nick that's different from the book, making it his own character, and I really like all those embellishments as well. Very big fan of the TV show, very excited for the movie. Heartstopper is a very big part of my life, if you did not know. Almost as big as, like, Shadowhunters is. That's how much I hold them. So anyway, I'm gonna go downstairs. Like I said, I think the plan is to read all 3 and then come up and talk to you about them individually after I read, after I read all 3. My goal is to read 3 today and 3 tomorrow. I'll get back to you. So starting with Heartstopper, how's the story begin? It starts with Charlie Spring going into his year 11 or his year 10 school, meeting year 11 Nick Nelson at his homeroom. It's grade 11. It's kind of more confusing because it's over in UK, so we're not going to really talk too much about schooling. We also learned that he is having a secret fling with a guy, oh my god, named Ben. We also learned that Charlie was outed last year and was horrendously bullied for it, for coming out as gay. He is in an all-boys school. A lot of the boys take offense to this. And then there is also an all-girls school as well. Charlie also has 2 best friends that we meet inside this book. One named Tao, one named Aled. He also has a sister and a little brother. The sister's name is Tori. The little brother's name is Alfie. Yeah, those are the important characters here. Bad characters, we have Harry. I think he's really the only one that gets spotlighted. Then we also do meet Tara in this book. So the whole point of this book is that Nick and, like I said, Nick and Charlie meet, and they both take a fascination to one another that is subtle. Charlie's a bit more upfront about it. He's very much more confronting about it as well. He realizes that he has feelings for this boy. However, Nick is a very looking straight male, and so he believes that it's just kind of like a weird friendship that they're developing, and they do develop it very strongly over the course of the next few weeks. They're hanging out nonstop. They're talking nonstop. Text messages. Another big thing is that Ben is really abusive towards Charlie and is using him. He's not out and is making Charlie feel like shit. And so there's a certain point in time, Charlie eventually joins the rugby team because Nick sees him running and it's like, oh my god, we need that on the team. So I'm gonna get him on this team because he's like team captain. Charlie joins for Nick, and in the process of this, one of the days after they get done doing their thing, their practice, Ben wants to meet up again. In the beginning of this book, Charlie says, I can't do this anymore, we're done, I'm never talking to you again. This is directly towards Ben, and Nick ends up overhearing a conversation, and Ben ends up assaulting Charlie, and Nick pulls him off, tells him to fuck off. It's a beautiful sequence of rescue, and they talk about it a little bit, but they talk more about it in text. I love how text is done. I love how iMessage is done. I love all that stuff in this book. I think it's done beautifully. So we fast forward, and they're getting kind of close, and they are talking about more stressful things. Now they're hanging out outside of school. He meets the dog. Nick meets Nellie, and it's a great time. They play outside, and Nick is starting to realize that he has big boy feelings for Charlie. He doesn't really understand them though. Nick from this in his life believed that he was straight, and so he starts to Google the average questions. How can I tell if I'm gay? What if I only like girls but now I like a boy? All these different things. He doesn't actually end up on the conclusion of bisexual here. We'll get more into that a little bit later. I just put a pin in that storyline and it will continue. By the end of this book, Nick invites Charlie to Harry's 16th birthday party at this castle. They end up going. Charlie's really excited because he wants to hang out with Nick, and Nick ends up being pulled away by this group of friends with Harry involved to go find Tara, who was this girl that Nick kissed when they were 12. And so obviously they're like, oh my god, you're the straight kid, so we gotta go find you a girl, type of thing. And he finds out that Tara's actually a lesbian. She's in a relationship with Darcy, and so it would never have worked out. And we move on, and he goes and finds Charlie because she's like, oh, do you like Charlie? That's the whole conversation. And he goes and finds Charlie, and when he finds Charlie, they run upstairs together to get away from the crowd. And Charlie is he kind of just said everything he was feeling. He's like, do you have a crush on anybody? And who is she? Nick makes a comment being like, why does it have to be a girl? And then he's like, could it be a guy? And Nick's like, maybe. And then he's like, could you ever kiss a guy? And he's like, maybe. Would you ever kiss me? And he said yes. And then they're like, do you want to? The rest is kind of history because they do make out. However, due to this being a very new thing for Nick, when his friends come searching for him, he does freak out and run away. And that's where volume 1 ends. The only other thing I want to mention is that Tao does not like Nick. This will come later on in future storylines. However, it's good to mention here. He is the only one out of the friend group who believes that Nick is ill-intentioned. Those things will be explored as we get a little deeper, but that's Heartstopper Volume 1. Heartstopper Volume 2 takes place right after the events of Heartstopper Volume 1. Charlie goes home crying, expecting that Nick did exactly what everybody told him he was going to do. Kiss him, make fun of him, being like, I kissed the gay guy, blah, 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 blah. And so he's really, really depressed. He goes home, he cries himself to sleep. Nick shows up the next morning and apologizes. They have a huge make-out sesh. Nick said he doesn't understand what's going on. He's never felt this way before about anyone, especially that was a guy, and he just doesn't really understand and
Like, honestly, I'm having a proper full-on gay crisis.
From that he liked Tara at one point. This will come up later on in this book, that little plot point, because it does become a point of like trying to figure out if Nick is, maybe it's a plot point. Actually, you know what? I'm thinking it's a plot point in the first book. I just totally forgot about it. Let's move on. And so they go to the bowling alley and they have a great time. However, Tao does confront him in the bathroom, saying that you need to stop this relationship with Nick Nelson. It's going nowhere. It's doing nothing. All you're going to do is get hurt. It's going to be like last year all over again, and I don't want you going through that again. And Charlie calls him out, tells him he's being a dick, and he really needs to stop. And then him and Nick have a moment at the concession stand where Nick apologizes for this because it's his fault, because he's still trying to figure things out, and so no one can know that he actually does have feelings for him and that this is a much stronger bond. And then we move forward. That's that. They continue to hang out for a while. They hang out after, by the way, and they share a present together. He gets him a picture of Nellie and him in the snow, covered in different shapes and stuff. It's very beautiful. So by this point, they're in a pretty practical relationship with one another, just strictly on the down low. He's trying to figure out if he's going to come out and win, and if that's a conversation he's willing to have. Charlie's really scared about Nick coming out because Nick wasn't there when Charlie came out, and the very aggressive bullying, and so Charlie doesn't want Nick to go through that. And so that's a very big part of this conversation as well, is homophobia and how rampant it is, especially like in his friend group and stuff. Tara shows up again and talks to Nick. Tara is a really big character when it comes to Nick's development, especially with his sexuality, because she also had a hard time coming to her terms and her feelings with her relationship. It also wasn't presented really great at Higgins, so they had this whole conversation about it, and she said, as long as you have someone by your side, like I had Darcy, you can get through anything, especially the really hard shit. Is that somebody for you, like Charlie? And Nick comes down to the realization that yes, it's exactly like Charlie. Charlie would help him no matter what, and they could actually get through this pretty good. So studying for exams, we're getting close to the end of this semester as well. Things are happening where they are being caught. They're caught twice, I think, maybe 3 times in this book. One is Tori, which is Charlie's sister, who suspected that Nick was into him, and they get caught making out. Another one is Aled, which I talked about briefly. He's not really in this book. However, I do forget that he's gay because it's not really explored super deeply in the TV show that I remember. He has a much bigger character role there. All the characters, like Al has a much bigger character role in the TV show as well, but otherwise side characters are a bit more spotlighted, which I do enjoy quite a bit. But he has a boyfriend here. I don't think his boyfriend is in the TV show that I remember, James. However, that is a conversation that ends up happening here as well, and so he has no problem with keeping this under down low and talking about it. This comes very apparent to Al's situation, which is not in this book. I'm jumping a lot ahead of myself, but either way, Aled ends up seeing them. He's cool with it. Then also their coach is also cool with it, who ends up seeing them as well, because they're getting caught while they're doing things. Nick invites Charlie out to the movies. He tells Charlie it's gonna be fine, no one there is gonna make fun of him. This is a group of guys that he really enjoys. A part of those are rugby guys that Charlie even enjoys. However, the thing that ends up happening here is that they do end up going to a movie. They end up seeing a scary movie. However, Harry's there, and Harry is very apparently homophobic, which I have already mentioned, and he calls Charlie several slurs. He makes a lot of jokes towards Charlie. Charlie gets really uncomfortable and leaves, and Nick goes back in, and him and Harry get into this huge fight. They're both punching one another over Charlie. Yeah, it's the second time that Harry has been told off, which is absolutely kind of crazy. They do have a few cute moments in the movie theater, but that's like really the big one. They don't really talk about the fact that he got into a fight. He doesn't realize until he sees him the next morning, and then they go off to the beach. This is a place that Nick likes to go that makes him feel comforted, and in this place, he tells him, they come to the realization that he's bisexual, and they also tell him that's like one of the big things, that he is now their boyfriend. That's also another thing. He comes out to his mom at the very end of the story, and that ends Volume 2 of Heartstopper. The story is moving very slowly, but also at a very nice pace. Very ebb and flows from one volume to another. We are crossing time like no tomorrow. We started the story at the very beginning of year 10, and now we are at the end of year 10. And so they have known each other for almost an entire year. And that's where, like I said, this volume concludes. I really love this volume. This is like one of my favorites, I think, in the entire series. And so A very big fan. Up to this point, story point wise, the big contention is the fact that Nick was in the closet. That is what held a lot of the stress and a lot of the conversations. Now, another big thing that will continue to be a big problem is the fact that Charlie is really scared for Nick to come out, period, because of his experience. And so that does continue to be a point of contention going forward. However, we are going to see the story go into some pretty darker places because it's pretty opened up. If you have read Alice in Wonderland's books before, these are all places she's gone many, many times. However, in the Heartstopper universe, some of these storylines do feel a little out of place. I will also like to mention, which book is this? I don't think it's in book 2. I want to say it's in this book that we learned that Charlie, during the height of everything, was cutting himself. I think that's in this book when he's talking to Nick about how dark it got, how bad it got. This is a story about a class trip. It's also a story about several different loves. So let's go ahead and jump into Heartstopper Volume 3. Heartstopper Volume 3 picks up exactly where the last one ended. We are officially into summer break. We learn about the trip that they're going on to Paris, and we also learned that Nick has come to the realization that he wants to start telling people that him and Charlie are a thing. He's not really sure when. He doesn't want it to become like a big coming out moment. However, he is more than welcome. He really wants to tell people that him and Charlie are like in a relationship. And so he believes on this trip, because it's going to be like a really big group of friends that they're pretty close to, that maybe this is the way to do it. And so they start telling several friends. They tell Al, they tell Darcy and Tara, and they tell a few other people out. Almost all their entire friend group except for one, Tal. Charlie goes and talks to Aled about it, and Aled's like, "Do you not tell Tal? Don't do it. He'll tell the whole school. He won't mean to. Don't feel it, but we're all pretty sure he's the reason why you got outed, because he was talking about so loudly in a hallway with a bunch of people around, and so someone heard, and then you got bullied really bad, and we don't want that happening again, so just keep it to yourself." I bring it up because it does become a plot point of contention, but also you can see why Tal is somewhat protecting Charlie throughout the beginning of the story, because he believes it's just happening over again, which is concerning to Tal because he wants Charlie to be happy. And so that's one of the storylines going on here. Oh, also, I should mention, his parents both know, Nick's parents and Charlie's parents know that they are together as well. The big thing is, like, they can't have sleepovers anymore or anything like that, because beforehand they could, because they're both boys or whatever. Now they can't because they're not in a relationship. It makes sense. However, I do think maybe it's because I've read the novellas and his parents come off so cruel in the novellas that, like, I never once find Charlie's parents to be, like, inviting or kind. There's a lot of points throughout the story, especially in this volume, where they show kindness, and it truly catches me off guard, especially his mother. And that's also because, like, I've talked about this before. I have a whole other video talking about Osmond verse, and so if you want to link, I'll link you over to it, where I do talk about Heartstopper. I do talk about some of these other storylines as well. But Solitaire is a direct connection to these. It takes place before the events of Heartstopper. Nick and Charlie are characters in there. We also have the Nick and Charlie novella that was written, and then we also have This Is Winter, which is also a Nick and Charlie event novella. This Winter, I think, takes place before the events of Volume 5, if I'm not mistaken. Nick and Charlie apparently takes place after the events of Volume 6. And then, like I said, Solitaire takes place during the events beforehand, in case you want to know a timeline. Radio Silence is also linked in here, but that's too complicated to explain. That's not important. Even though I would say out of all those books I just mentioned that are actual physical novels, Radio Silence was by far the best one. I bring this up only for the simple fact that I was really annoyed because his parents present themselves as likable here, and I was annoyed. Okay, let's move on. So we talked about the Tal situation, and so Nick's family situation, is that we learned that David is home, which is Nick's older brother who's home from college, who is an asshole. His only purpose in the story is to bring Nick some sort of pain. It's not even like a friendly, like, haha, I'm a real brother. No, he's like a literal dick. Like, that's the only way to describe it. It's a very infuriating experience to read from. He calls his brother several different names. He diminishes bisexuality. He snoops through Nick's stuff, learns that him and Charlie in a relationship, makes fun of Charlie for this. He is truly an asshole, and I can't honestly say his mom is doing a lot to combat this. She's doing the best she can, but not a lot. We also learn in this book that Nick's father is French, and that he lives in Paris, and that Nick is fluent in French, and so that's one of those storylines also being explored. He does not go see his dad in this book. That's not a storyline that's being explored. Alright, I think that's all the, like, at-home drama. David takes up quite a bit at the beginning of this book, and then they're off to Paris for I think they're in Paris for like 7 days. The first few days, they learn that boys and girls have to share, separate rooms, girls, boys. Nick gets paired up with Aled, Charlie, and Tal. Tao, because he believes that this is still just some type of flirtation, because once again, they have not told Tao yet about their relationship, decides to take one of the beds, and then Al takes the other bed, so Nick and Charlie don't have to share a bed, which is what they wanted to do. Logically speaking, because they were trying to keep this a little bit of a secret, this ends up working out in their favor. The thing that doesn't work out in their favor is that they do have a moment of silence before they get together at the group event, and he realizes the next morning that Nick ends up giving him a hickey, which is a love bite. And that is a point of contention throughout this entire story. That is one of the main things that it's talked about, and so that is why I bring it up. I'd also like to mention there are 2 teachers on this trip. I only mention this because they get like their own like little spin-off as well if you read the shorts, where they fall in love. It's very adorable. We have an older gentleman who's basically like a mentor for Charlie, who is taking a younger gentleman as his mentor, who just came out, and they like start a budding romance on this trip. It's 2 men from different schools. So that's really cute. Another thing that's being explored here is that Al and Tao have this like undeniable chemistry. It's mentioned in the last book. It's really coming to a head here. And so there are parts of the storyline that are very specific towards Al and very specific towards Tao, which is also great. Still very much centered around Nick and Charlie, so their plot points are built off of them like good foil characters. However, it does make them feel not as dimensional as you would hope. In this process, Tao ends up finding out. Charlie ends up telling him at some point during this trip, and he gets really upset about it because he believes the owners why he didn't tell him was because of this thing, and so he runs off. And he actually ends up kissing Elle in the loo, which is very beautiful. And then also another thing here is that Charlie ends up fainting as well. I'm pretty sure it's in the loo is when Charlie ends up fainting with the group, and that is because Charlie is not eating. This is something that Nick had already picked up on, is that Charlie has not really been eating the entire trip or taking very small bites and not finishing anything. He's not really understanding it. However, he does understand its concern. Obviously, Charlie ends up fainting. He's very upfront and very being like, I probably just didn't eat that much. I probably just need a sandwich. They end up eating together, and Charlie does explain that it is one thing that he can control, and so it is something that he is controlling, and it is a conversation that is had. And so eating disorders are brought into the mix. This is one of those storylines that I'd never, like, I'm really happy it's here. However, I do think the TV show did it better, because Charlie, it's not apparent in the first 2, like, I don't think it has to be, but it does kind of feel like it comes out of nowhere. We introduced a very, very dark and very deep storyline of Charlie's suicidal idolation in volume 2, or I think it's volume 2. I don't know. Volume 2 or volume 3, and it's talked about pretty deeply. However, now we have an eating disorder that Charlie definitely can develop, and also makes a lot of sense. There's other stuff that's not being talked about, like once again his family. But like it makes sense why this is happening, and I do think it's explored. However, I don't think it's explored well. It's a bit more deeper as we get a little bit further. It feels a little off in this volume. I kind of wanted it to be a later volume thing, but it's not. So it's okay. We're introducing it here. Nick takes care of Charlie, makes him feel really comforted, and they end up back at the dorm afterwards for their final night, or their final night in Paris, where Tara is hosting a party for her birthday. She's like turning 17 or something, maybe 18, and they all get a little drunk as well, and they play Truth or Dare, where Charlie is there to kiss a boy named James. James is like, dude, it's just for a dare. I'm very straight, but I will totally kiss you. I don't give a fuck. They try to kiss. Charlie pulls out. Nick's really happy about it. They get the girls, the other people who are there, who are not a part of the friend group, are really pissed about this. And then they start asking about who gave the love bite. Everybody a part of his initial friend group is like, dude, that's outing. That's really wrong. What the fuck's wrong with you? Ariel says, you have to play the game, whatever. And Nick comes out to the entire class. They went on this trip. So a lot of people will know by the time school starts back up in August. That's like one of the last big plot points of this side of this book. And the book ends with Charlie trying to figure out how to tell Nick he loves him by Google, and Nick trying to figure out if Charlie has an eating disorder and what that looks like. And we're seeing a bit of a darker turn for Nick as well. We're seeing a lot more emotions. He seems to be at this moment a golden retriever Care Bear, that we love. He's getting a little bit more depth than a golden retriever Care Bear. Charlie is still Charlie. Okay. And that's the first 3 volumes in Heartstopper. Now, the way this is going to work, volume 4 and 5 will also be documented together, like I just did, because I felt like that made a lot of sense for this type of video. And then volume 6, I'll read with you as I read it. Yeah, okay. Heartstopper Volume 4 begins with Nick and Charlie at a standstill, essentially. Charlie wants to say I love you for the first time. Nick wants to confront Charlie about his eating disorder or about the fact that he might have one. In the very beginning of this book, Nick ends up actually going off for holiday, and so they're actually separated for a pretty long portion of this time. And when they are separated for this period of time, because he is going off on holiday, they do have this conversation in the water. However, it's not the I love you conversation, it's the eating disorder. Nick confronts him in a very kind, very generous, like very sweet way, and basically states, hey, I think this is what's wrong. Charlie has a very bad reaction to this, rejects it, moves on, backs away. Then Nick's about to leave on this holiday trip, and he ends up kissing him, and Charlie end up sharing I love yous in the shower. Very cute. Very cute. They went out together. It's always a good moment, and then they say I love you. Then they're separated for 3 weeks for the rest of holiday term. In these 3 weeks, we see Nick and Charlie going through very dark periods of their time. Charlie is freaking out about everything, and Nick is particularly freaking out about Charlie. Also, in this period of time, something I'm kind of glossing over is that Charlie's mom is being really aggressive the entire time, is the way I would how to explain it. And she's not being aggressive towards anybody else but Charlie. It feels very targeted. Every single time it happens, it feels very targeted. And also I think like this winter, I think really proves the point of where like she gets mad at everybody else for people being mad at her for being mad at Charlie, but she will never, like she doesn't get mad at other people. Like Oliver is doing all these rambunctious things, so that's a reason for you to be frustrated with your child, but like a good reason to be frustrated with your child, I guess. And yet Charlie is literally just standing there and she's yelling at him. And that is something that's happening throughout this entire discourse. Just important to note. Nick ends up having a very confronting thing. In the TV show, it adds some extra like little tidbits, but this isn't like a TV show breakdown. It was interesting though because how important Tori comes into this storyline. Because they spend the majority of this book separated. So Nick ends up calling Charlie and says, hey, they talked to your parents, said, I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about you. And Charlie just straight up says, I can't talk to my parents. My parents are gonna think I'm lying. They're gonna think I'm crazy. They're gonna say all these things. They're gonna be so mean. My mom's gonna be so mean. I cannot do this. And Nick says, I don't know what to do. Charlie says, I don't know either. His mom comes in, interrupts them, makes Charlie feel worse again, and he ends up with the phone. Nick ends up having this conversation with his mom about how he believes Charlie has an eating disorder and doesn't know what to do. And she says, dude, you're only 16. You're only his boyfriend. You can only do so much. What you are doing is great. And here are things that can help. And here are things that have been told to help with other people. And XYZ. Talk to somebody who 9 yards. He gets back home. He ends up having a pretty heart-to-heart with Charlie about this once they're like reunited. And he tells him that he should write it all down in a letter and they should tell his mom. I want to say that, yeah, okay, so it is Nick's birthday, Nicholas's birthday, is what this is covering, which I kind of remembered, but I also kind of forgot. Either way, he sits down and talks to his parents. His parents are extremely, like, cool. They're like, okay, this is what's going on. All right, well, we're going to put some boundaries out because his mom, I don't think his mom handles this very well. His dad, on the other hand, does handle it pretty well. Tori handles it decently well. The events of all of this, especially like right after those events, we are dealing with Solitaire during the events of this as well. And so she has her own stuff going on, but I think it's pretty well done. And so he ends up talking. And so he ends up actually going and seeing someone who does diagnose him, at least with an eating disorder, particular anorexia. But they tell them he can't get into any type of program until January of the following year. This was in September, I think, is when he is diagnosed, which is why I think my brain's a little off. And they go through, I think it's like 4 or 5 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, of him increasingly getting worse. He gets more violent and like he's snappy, judgy, very cold towards a lot of people. So his parents and him and Nick all kind of decide that he should probably go into an inpatient program because he started to harm, as probably the right word, himself again. Another thing we have talked about in the past, it has popped up again, and so he ends up going into an inpatient program for 2 months. In this inpatient program for 2 months, I'll talk about what happens with Nick here in a second, as he does have his own kind of breakthroughs. But when he's in this program for 2 months, he learns several things about himself. He learns that he has OCD, which is what's connected with his eating disorder. According to his therapist, it's not so much an eating disorder that he has, because eating disorder normally comes down to the actual act of food and it being a food problem. It's actually a compulsion disorder and how it throws off your brain, how you can't eat during certain moments because of, like, I don't know, the exact, but you understand my point. It's more like a compulsion thing. So yeah, so he's away, and so he learns about several different things. He also learns a lot of ways to help because they do know it's going to get bad again. I can't stay good. So he's gone for 2 months. He comes back home during the Christmas break, which is where this winter is set. We went a little bit more in depth what happens on that night. It is briefly touched on in volume 4. But let's talk about Nick Nelson for a second before we jump into Charlie, more like their relationship and stuff. Because like I said, we are kind of jumping back and forth a bit when it comes to this stuff. I guess Tao and everybody else, they do have slight roles, and I have kind of fallen away from talking about Shara, Tao, Darcy, Tara. Oh my god, I can't think of Elle. I haven't really talked about them quite a bit, I guess, this experience. Briefly. We'll talk, I think, more about them in volume 5. Yeah, I think so. Because right now it's not really that important. Nick has learned that he has a hard time being away from Charlie. He also has learned, because of how their relationship developed, and also because a lot of his friends are being pretty big dicks, that he doesn't have a lot of friends outside of Charlie, and outside of Charlie's friends, who are a lot of his friends for sure, like Tara and Darcy. You know, Tara in particular has really become a pretty close friend with Nick's, but he does feel very isolated in general, and so that's one of the things that Nick had definitely learned. They do end up getting another dog as well, save Nellie, and then they have a little dog. And then he also becomes close with Tori, because Oliver isn't a thing in the TV show. I just saw this experience, so that's my brain just thinking of a television show. I just watched this play out. But with Tori, they become close because of their connection towards Charlie and their love for Charlie. And it kind of just blossoms into an actual friendship, which I think is really beautiful. Okay, so like I said, he does come back for Christmas, and Christmas isn't great. That's kind of where we're gonna leave a bit of stuff. So yeah, so like he comes back for Christmas, and Christmas isn't great, and mom get into this fight about food and a few other things with grandparents and stuff. He ends up going over to Nick's for the rest of the night. That's great. Tori ends up showing up later as well, as she can't handle the house either. All handy dandy. They go to a New Year's Eve party where they do celebrate New Year's together. It's beautiful. And all the respective couples are together at this point in time as well. Also, something else that I think is important is that Charlie does have Jeff. Jeff is Charlie's therapist. Nick and Charlie are going over to Charlie's place, and Nick is coming. He comes once a year to visit Nick and Nick's brother. They had this whole entire interaction. His brother tries to out him, blows up on his dad. His dad ends up being really kind about the entire thing, and his brother's still just a pathetic asshole. Nothing's really shocked there, and I do really enjoy a lot of those conversations, to be honest with you. That brings us to the end of volume 4. Volume 4 was a 5-star. I know it deals with a lot of heavy stuff, but I really liked it. Okay, let's talk Volume 5. Volume 5, I've actually pretty much done in depthly before as well. I'll give it to this 5-star prediction for my initial reaction when I read this when it came out. However, I'll mention this is all about sex. This whole thing's about sex. It's all about them trying to find time to do it. It's also about the future. If you are familiar with the Nick and Charlie thing I just mentioned, which is technically, I don't know where volume 6 ends, but technically at this moment in time, the furthest we have in timeline in the relationship, a lot of things happen in here I already knew about. Whereas Nick choosing where to go off to college. Because that's also another thing. Nick and Charlie are obviously a year apart, and we are officially entering, we have been in, I haven't really talked about that. We're going through school years like no tomorrow. We are officially in 12th grade. We are in year 12. We are in the summer of year 12 in the beginning of this, and we are in year 12. He is going to be graduating. He has to figure out where he's going to go to school. And so he has choose Kent as his number one choice. Kent's maybe 30 minutes from his mom's, maybe 15 minutes from his mom's. And he has also chose it because of Charlie. He believes he leaves Charlie. Charlie has said multiple times as well, please don't leave me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I can survive this. Whole 9 yards. He's not doing it in a manipulative way. However, the words can be very manipulative. And I do think they come off as manipulative as well, which does suck. But I don't really think it's Charlie's ill will towards anything or anybody. I think it's just how it comes across. And so he's chosen that. He has more likings towards colleges like Leans or things like that. And so he's going to go on a trip with Elle, Darcy, and Tara off onto this road trip to figure out where they want to go to school. They're going to go uni shopping for a week. And so that's one of the things that's happening inside this book. Once again, like I said, this whole book is all about sex. I'm going to quickly run down some relationship stuff, and then we'll end it with Nick and Charlie's story throughout the entire thing. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of a run through with some characters, as I think it's important. So Tao and Elle are still together. They're going through an interesting impasse in their relationship. They are having sexy time as well. Not that it's explicitly talked about, but it is noted that they have increased the relationship to that degree. And we also learned that Elle is going to choose a place that's pretty far away, and so they are going to have to jump into a long distance relationship. Moving on to Tara and Darcy. Tara and Darcy is really interesting to me because I do love them together. However, I've never felt like they were like fully in game. I don't know if I still feel that way or not, but Darcy is taking a gap year and Tara is going off to this college that she does want to go to. That's a big thing. Aled, for instance, still has Jonathan. He's not asexual in the books. At least he doesn't physically came out as asexual in the books. So that's also really interesting that that's a storyline that's being explored because of, like, Tori is aromantic, which we'll talk about. I'll talk about here. I'll even wait until she pops up in her storyline with Michael. And so I do find that interesting. But either way, he is with Jonathan, I think. Sahir is also here. No relationship inside the novel, so nothing to worry about. Like I said, Michael is Tori's boyfriend by the end of this. They end up having a pretty good heart-to-heart. And then let's quickly talk about Mr. Fork and Mr. AJ. These are two teachers that are pretty popular and prominent throughout the story, and they are officially a couple by the time we meet them here. Alright, I think that's everything that's important that you need to know for side characters when it comes to the Heartstopper storylines. Let's go ahead and talk Volume 15, or Volume 5 in its entirety. So we start the story off pretty closely where we left off. They're kissing in school. They're back in school for final year, like I said. They have a cute moment. It gets pretty hot and heavy, and they kind of realize they're probably going to want to move things along. At least I should say this as much Charlie has. Charlie has a lot of issues with body dysmorphia and stuff, and so this is a very uncomfortable topic for him. However, he is interested in wanting to explore it a little bit further. They end up throwing a pretty big party for Charlie's birthday is what we have here, and he gets pretty drunk, and he does admit to Nick that he wants to do naughty things with Nick. Nick also agrees that he wants to do naughty things with Charlie, but they hasn't moved past like that. They've done a few different things, but that's about it. And then, like I said, also, like I had mentioned earlier, they are figuring out school years. They're talking all about, a lot of this takes place with, like, in Nick's mind being like, I don't know what the fuck to do, and Charlie being like, I just want to bone him, which makes it hard for me to explain to you because it's pretty simple. It doesn't have a lot more layers than that either. Like, it really is about these two impasses, but they handle it very beautifully. So, like, it's not even that complicated. Still wanting to have sex or making jokes about having sex. Lots of sex talk going on right now. You know what I mean? You know how it goes. They don't end up having sex. A conflict that does end up popping up is that they try a few different times and they keep getting caught. Mostly because they're at Charlie's house. And so Charlie agrees that him and Nick should have a sleepover at his house. Everybody in his house except his mom thinks it's fine. His mom believes he has a sleepover, he's going to fail all of his grades and he's going to lose and he's going to fail in life. On one hand, she's not objectively wrong in having this concern. On another hand, calm down. Cool off. Like, what are you doing? So, yeah, it's a pretty big deal. They do come to a compromise that he has to wait until exams are over, and then they can get together. Well, that follows right after the events of Nick having to leave during exam season, because they get out early because of school, and he's going to go and do this tour. So that's what's going to happen. And like I said, that is essentially what is happening. They are going to go do the tour. They're still talking about all other things that are going on. There just isn't any really big developments. Everything is exactly how it's said. So once again, they get pretty close. They do some pretty over the clothes stuff, but nothing egregious. Lots of touching and stuff, which is really cute. And then, like I said, they do go off onto this trip. He realizes pretty early on that he doesn't want to go to University of Kent. He wants to go to University of Leeds, and that is what his choice is. Charlie's very forgiving of this when he does tell him they get back home. Charlie also has been a part of, because Sahir really becomes a character here, I guess. She becomes a character pretty prominently before this moment, but I guess she does become a character really significantly in this book. He joins their band and is going to be putting on a concert. That's also important. And so Nick has to get back in time for the concert, which he misses the beginning of, but he does eventually, they do get back in time. He goes and he puts on the thing, and once again, like I said, they do have that conversation, Charlie and Tori do, about her sexuality with Michael. It all works out, and then they do end up having sex, and the book ends relatively soon after that, with things kind of up in the air, but also knowing that they're very much in love, and that they're going to be okay. That's these two volumes. I have volume 6 right here. This is going to be a read with me portion of this video. This is a little different. We don't typically do this, but it's a graphic novel, so I figured it would be fine. This is also a 5-star prediction portion of this video as well. I'm kind of like shoehorning a few different videos into this particular one. I wanted to read volume 6 together because I feel like that's the way to do it. It's the final volume for Heartstopper. I think this is the way. I have it on my Kindle. I've not been able to, with everything going on with life, be able to get out to the bookstore to buy anything. So we're going to read it together right now as we speak. And I'm going to tell you all my spoilery thoughts. Yeah, no hold back. For a 5-star prediction portion, my prediction is a 5-star. It's in my 5-star predictions of the year. Yeah, this is just a video that I will reference when talking about it. And also, who doesn't love a read with me section? Grab your copy. It will be fast up. Like, I will speed up to the parts where I talk. If you've never seen a read with me before, that's just because no one's to sit here for as long as it's actually going to take me to read this book. Just the answer. And I'll talk to you of my thoughts and opinions on when I have things important to say. This does require you to have a copy and have read it because I don't typically explain everything that's going on, but I do enjoy this style of being able to, like, film with you. So, let's do it. Anybody else ready for Heartstopper Volume 6? I know I'm kind of, like, really not. Mentally. I mean, this is my thing, my baby, you know what I mean? Oh, I guess I didn't mention, he is going to become, like, a head boy, which is someone who is, like, a part of, like, the council in school for a year, for the final year. Okay, so the beginning of this is all about Charlie becoming a head boy, if he's going to get it or not. For them not having sleepovers, they're like such a huge part. They are nothing but sleeping over. I'm all. This is where the weird part is. I'm all because they're all clapping for him. So cute. And he wins. Literally no one's shocked, but good for them. Okay, so Charlie is quitting rugby. Nick is mixed on it. Okay, seems to be going pretty well. Well, I say this, and now I'm gonna say maybe he's really busy, I guess, with the whole, you know, head boy thing. He's making clubs that are particularly gay and putting together forces, which is all great. But Nick does seems like they're a bit of a weird situation. Oh, he has a job with Darcy. Oh, he filled out this too. Photo album. Oh, more sex. This is so interesting. Because, like, I think we spent the majority of the story looking at it from the perspective of we always known that Nick was dealing with stuff. Like, it was home stuff, if it was Charlie. We've had that in the back of our head the entire time of the story being going on, especially once they started adding, you know, more topics and intense topics and stuff. It's like nothing new. And so having Charlie now be privy to the side of Nick that we've not seen before, I am curious to see what that's going to do with their relationship and their dynamic, because that is one of those things that hasn't really been, like, shown. Okay, so they're introducing the storyline about Michael going to the Olympics. That's not really something that's talked about in these, but it is it is like a connection thing that is made in things that are in future timeline stuff. He's having nightmares. I wonder what's going on. Oh, he had a dream he died. Okay, he's having anxiety about food again. He's denied a few meals as well. Okay, Nick is pretty drunk. He's gonna blow up. Someone just asked him, like, why he's only been dating, like, he only dated Charlie. That's weird. Tara, Elle, and Tower fighting about her going off to school. The Tara and Darcy stuff, I wonder if we're not even gonna, like, focus on in adaptation, just for the simple fact that, like, a lot of Darcy's problems that I have seen that have been talked about in the show have already pretty much been cleared up. Curious to see what they would do. Okay, yeah, they're just kind of moving this storyline. It's been done. That felt out of character. I don't really know if he would say therapy speak like that. Maybe he would. I don't know. Am I up? I don't know how I feel. Okay, so he did relapse like I thought he was. That's good. That was pretty well talked about. Okay, so he's still trying to figure himself out. That was a conversation, like I said, that was happening in the last book, and not having really friends or anything, and so that's still going around because he still only just has Charlie. At least that's what is being assumed here, I should say. I think we're about halfway through. So weird. You would think something like this would tell me if I'm halfway through a book. And losing light. It's horrible lighting. I'll look it up and turn on actual light. Okay, so he's not getting fights on the field. So this is great. And he got into a fight. Okay, they're thinking he might get suspended. He got into a fight because someone used a slur. Okay, so he saw an older couple. It's possibly gonna make me cry. I find these storylines in particular, especially in queer stories, when we're older people fighting who are madly in love in queer relationships. It always makes me cry. But anyway, he found these older couple came into his work and were just like chatting, having a good time, being very supportive of one another. And it was just enough for him to be like, oh my God, yes. And it's like, yes, we've been known. Another beautiful, beautiful monologue by Sarah. Just with Olivia Colman was going to be the one delivering it in the movie. It won't be her, you know? That's okay. They're having a really, like, upfront conversation about all this. Nick wants to be the perfect boyfriend because he believes Charlie will outgrow him. Charlie's basically explaining that life is going to happen. He's going to get sick again. These are all things that are going to happen. It's just, like, everyday life. Nick needs to understand this. It's done very well. More sex. You know, I was told that there was going to be a lot of this movie. And yeah, no, I think that's like the 5th time. Okay, he submitted his applications and he got deleted. He's looking at places to volunteer. This is all Nick. He's not being stripped of being captain, however, he is going to sit out for the next 2 months. They're like full-fledged characters. I cannot. Not when elders who are gay get storylines. Okay, Tao and Elle continue to break up. It's like the 3rd time. I just keep ignoring it. I'm so naive. See, it's such a different dynamic than what it is in the show. That's so fascinating. Elle is such a vastly different character. There were so many comments. I didn't talk about this in my full review for volume 5. There were so many comments that she made that I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, genuinely, she was pissing me off. Here, I think it's fine. I think it's also very true, and I do think not everybody can end up together, like have an end game. So like, it's fine. They've been together for 2 years. They're, however, taking it very much better. Like, Charlie's taking this better than I thought Charlie was gonna take it. And I still have, like, 170 pages left. I have 154 pages left. There's this storyline with this kid that I skipped over as well. It's interesting. Very much in the background. Nick did get a volunteering job with dogs. Let's not be shocked. It's Sarah's birthday. So many birthdays. I think too closely on that line, a dialogue, I think it will break me. No. Can't have that today. We're gonna move along. Page 305, said by his father, you were a bit busy surviving, weren't you, bitch? Can't be there right now. This is interesting. Okay, so his brother cheated on his girlfriend, which is why they broke up. He made a comment about his dad or whatever. That's the reason why they're talking. What a fucking complex situation done beautifully between 2 brothers. He's still a fucking dick, but he is the golden retriever. Interesting metaphors. Okay, Alfie's obviously a younger version of himself. Once again, we're doing the metaphors. They're good. I like the dog one better. There's something about it. This is really funny. It's like Nick. When I think of Nick, I think he is the definition of a golden retriever type, like love interest. Like when you think of it, I think he is the personification of it. So this is the cute metaphor. The dog one. That one, I liked it a little better. Aww. He's putting on a top secret club. I do think this is gonna be. As I'm crying. It's fine. Tears are fun and cute. Said no one. Okay, James. Yes, I would. Of course you would, Tori. Guess he's graduated because we're doing June Pride Month stuff. Okay, I think we're doing their version of prom. Oh my God, they're engaged. The fucking teachers are engaged. They did break up. Alan Tao. Oh my God, they're gonna recreate the keys. The epilogue is 50 pages. Girl, I cannot. If I get a long epilogue and they're like old. Okay. Ready? Here we go. So, Tara and Darcy did go on their little trippy trip. Here did well in her band. Michael got into the Olympics. Tao and Elle re-met their time. Charlie, Nick, leads. They went out to a club, went back, had spicy time, and continue to have more spicy time. How am I already on 4:33? No. Okay, I'm also gonna read the author's note, and then we'll talk about it. May as well play this for them. Okay, let's talk about it. I'm giving it 5 stars. Unshocked. Who's shocked? No one's shocked. It was beautiful. It was fucking gorgeous. I don't have a ranking for this. I don't know. I do wish that I had more of an extension past the point that they're at, but it's fine. I'm perfectly fine with where we ended this world and these characters. I think it's beautiful. And I think there's enough hope for everybody's collective end games and stuff, so no complaints. 10 out of 10s across the board. And yeah, I'll sit down in the next few days. I'll finish the TV show first, and then I'll sit down and I'll talk about what I hope is for the movie. And then more than likely, me and my husband will watch the movie, and then I'll do a whole review spoiler thing as well. So keep an eye out for that video if it's not already out. If it's already out, keep an eye out for this video. And yeah, all right. I'll tell you all next time. Thanks for watching, and goodbye. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a fun time.